Achildat made his way through the celebrating crowd, seeking out the bubble of hate that was his buddy, September. Achildat had been sent this way to try to deal with this before a riot started. Also because he was confused. September was a part of the research team devoted to finding a counter for the T-lean inhibitor. It was a terrifying weapon that seemed to somehow blanket large areas with the field that disabled advanced technology as well as robbing creatures of higher intelligence. Today was the first confirmed defeat of the T-lean and the liberation of a planet from this horrific weapon. So September should be celebrating, but was instead taking up a corner booth and swearing quite viciously at anyone and everyone nearby. Achildat interrupted yet another rant as he set down his drink at the booth. "Dirty, stupid monkeys!" September slammed his forelimb into the table. "Calm down, friend. I have heard many complaining that you are ruining the party. Today, we drink to our victories, not scream about monkeys. What is the problem?" September glared and took a large pull of his drink. "The problem is that we didn't find a countermeasure for the inhibitor." Achildat could only stare, even more confused now. "But we won, so you beat the inhibitor." September finished his drink. "No, we wasted 1,526 cycles and 13 billion credits, only for those fucking humans to show up and laugh at us."
Achildat leaned in. "What do you mean, my friend? I haven't heard much about humans. They are new, yes? Barely part of the Galactic Union for 100 cycles. Heard about the war going on and sent a fleet of warriors to help out. Of course, it was a drop in the bucket compared to the rest of the fleet, and their weapons consist of just variable speed rocks shot from ships that don't even have shields. But they sent some warriors. We warned them about the inhibitor, all the standard disclosures. The humans didn't really seem to understand, though. Probably should have been a sign." Achildat clicked his fingers together to get September's attention as he seemed to stare into the distance. Anyway, they get to the front, and of course, within a week, the warning signs of the inhibitor starting up get noticed. So we start our evacuation process and point the sensor arrays to try to do more research. Humans don't make it off-world, so we watch the newest species, figuring this will be another data point and maybe help us solve the problem. The wave of distortion clears and the humans are standing around, staring at each other. Will they be scattered? Graze? Kill each other? Go into comas like the Brockie? Only for them to start grouping up and screaming at each other. There's some shoving, they hit themselves and others, and then they settle down, still occasionally screaming and making noises. It took us an embarrassingly long time to realize they had formed social groups and established hierarchies based on their previous unit organization. Achildat tilted his head. "But how did they—"
September slammed all his forelimbs against the table and shouted. They were communicating. The hooting and hollering and screaming was them somehow communicating. No higher brain function, yet there they are, somehow talking to each other. And then to make matters worse, one of them ends up running into something with his armor. He finds the sound funny and starts laughing. The other humans gather around and also start making funny sounds. Soon, they are in groups competing at making the best funny sounds, which might as well be music and culture. Achildat just seemed even more confused, starting to wish he was sober. September grew more and more agitated as he spoke. Then, drawn to the sounds, the T-lane showed up. They're as baffled as we are, so one of them goes up and stabs one of the humans, figuring that'll scare them off and solve the problem. Instead, the stupid ape looks down at the blade and touches it, as if they are too dumb to realize what is going on. All the humans stop making their noises, the injured human screams and punches the T-lane. This, of course, causes every other human to scream and charge the T-lane. They proceed to beat them to death and tear their limbs off. Several of them spotted using rocks and clubs. One manages to throw a rock and put a hole in a T-lane head, so of course the others also start throwing rocks.
September grabs and finishes a Hold It drink. Then, for reasons I hope I never understand, they start eating the tealine. In multiple cases, before the tealine was actually dead, until some of them started getting sick and then they all stopped eating them. If a Hold It thought any harder, he might start to hemorrhage. But that's tool use and pattern recognition. September groaned. Exactly. The humans then formed gangs and began hunting down and killing any tealing they could find, plus anything else they deemed a threat or food source. We, of course, start questioning and scanning the humans, trying to figure out what could possibly be going on, only for the human leader to just look at me and make weird hand motions and say, "Ape together strong," as if that made sense. September pushed his comm slate in front of a Hold It. When we question the other humans, they just keep sending us these things called memes and saying shit like "return to monkey." Meanwhile, the tealine are turning off the inhibitor so they can use their ships to get off the planet and flee because they are so terrified of these feral primates. A Hold It chuckled slightly, drunk enough to find that funny without really understanding any of it. So if they don't use their higher brain power for communication, forming social groups, cooperating, or tool use, what do they use it for? September slumped down. The human just sort of shrugged and said, "Suffering, mostly." A Hold It stared down into his empty glass. They're pretty new and jumped right into an advanced interstellar war. Are we sure they actually have higher brain function? September groaned. That is what I've been saying this whole time, and the human admiral had the gall to look at me and say, they're Marines. If they needed brain power, we'd issue it to them, with a straight face. I want my 1,500 cycles back, you damn dirty apes. The human admiral was brought before the executive council in irons, as the humans would call them. Handcuffs, foot shackles, all strung together with steel chain. Not for fear of his death world strength, but to send a message. This event was to be videocast across council space. His crime? Fighting an unsanctioned war. Admiral Chavez stood hunched, his hands chained tight to his feet as if his jailers had underestimated his height, though he knew it was to make him appear as a supplicant rather than a victorious admiral. "My lords of this council, do you have any charge to bring to my person or my people? I arrive here in chains, like a rabid animal, all but muzzled." 2 council representatives, one walking carpet / feruli, and one very toothy chameleon, a Kentucky, raised their voices in cacophony to be silenced by Chavez's next request. "I would like a galaxy star map on the holo, and the lights out." Humans had expanded before galactic contact. Alpha Centauri, Barnard Star, Proxima Centauri, and all the barely warm dwarf stars in between. They tried to follow the rules and tried to keep their heads down. With most of human territory within about 25 light years of Earth, they didn't step on anybody's toes. The real estate was, frankly, terrible. Dying stars, stars that never started, and Sol. The human confederacy was the primary exporter of heavy, transuranic elements left by these nova remnant systems and the like. Nova remnants, galactically ancient systems, all things in Confed space were sought after materially, but unpalatable to colonize. On the holoscreen was a representation of what had been human colonized space, approximately spherical about Sol, with a 10 light-year bite into it corewards. Chavez continued, "I'm unfamiliar with your politics. I'm unfamiliar with 90% of the species represented in this body, and if our translation algorithms are as half-assed as I think they are, this might be lost in translation. But those fucking dickheads," gesturing to the objecting species,
invaded and destroyed sovereign human worlds and got exactly what was coming to them. My people and I are innocent by right of self-defense. Good, habitable systems were the gold standard for council species, and they let the humans have their garbage worlds that nobody would colonize. Let the rats eat their trash because nobody would miss it. And for 400 years, humans colonized this galactic trash uncontested, building orbitals around cool brown dwarf stars, mega-Jupiters, and the inhospitable systems about Sol, mining the frozen worlds, even having totally ice-bound polities. Again, never more than 25 light years from Sol, more than 3 trillion humans lived about the stars. And then they figured out how to turn the dark into light.
Chavez again raged. For 400 Sol years, we built in the galactic mud around Sol. We dragged the resources of the darkest systems out to market. We had hundreds of millions of souls working in twilight to furnish resources for all of you. And then we figured out how to turn the lights back on. Humans had, it seems, always kept the philosophy of YOLO in their hearts, because by dropping an appropriately shielded ship containing black hole into a brown dwarf, a mega Jupiter, etc., you could kick off a few million years of M-type fusion and make a cold, dead system bright and warm and habitable for a time. A few million years at a time was a profitable few million years. And suddenly the crowded galaxy saw gold in humanity's trash because the lights were back on. So, the Feruli and the Kentucky attacked a peaceful race that had a comparably little navy, little military at all, and no real advantage but stellar engineering. And the obvious happened. Admiral Chavez, undermanned, having fought a naval war wildly outgunned and losing system by system for a decade, ordered the lights turned off. Those ships stabilizing every star, a third of all of the stars the human confed had mastered, now in enemy hands, went offline and fucked right the hell off. Knowing they have to run, as many humans as possible had evacuated ahead of the enemy advance, and the occupiers greasily settled the former human worlds. Greedy carpetbaggers had taken lands the humans had cultivated for generations, built out of nothing. And then they were pitched into the freezing dark as the humans turned out the lights. The fusion in those stars stopped. The M-type suns became brown dwarfs again. The mega-Jupiters back to icy hydrogen giants. But the belligerents were not done. Furious at the scorched Earth campaign, they made all haste to Earth. They burned Alpha Centauri, Barnard's star, and short of destroying Earth, they took Admiral Chavez and the Confed leadership back as hostages, whatever leaders they could find. Back with the Executive Council, Chavez had nearly finished his testimony. "Could you release my hand restraints? I have one demonstration to make and I need my hands for indication," he asked. Surrounded by guards, it seemed simple to unbind his hands, but not his feet. "Thank you, gentlemen," Chavez nodded to his jailers. "To my charge of unsanctioned war, let me make this deliberative body know full well that our definitions of war are very different. My opponents believe that by my capture and the capture of my government, they have decapitated our side and have therefore won the war, that the war is over. Humans are not of one mind, not one singular purpose. The Confederation is just that. Many under one name. I am an admiral," Chavez remarks, "but I am not the admiral. For each one of me, there are 10 more and 10 again vice admirals, and 10 more so rear admirals, and the 10 and 10 again will follow this order. As this is being videocast galaxy-wide, let this be a warning." Pointing his index finger on the holomap at a star system of one of the co-belligerents, he made the finger gun motion.
That star on the holomap vanished. Rowdy cacophony followed as there were calls of theater, bullshit, until real calls started filtering in. The star had gone nova. Chavez continued, "Was that a fluke? Let's try another." He finger guns another belligerent star. It similarly vanished from the holomap. Chavez made his point. Having problems with your star? Have you tried turning it off and on again?